Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Stephanie Sandala. I'm Programming and Outreach Specialist here at Library Link NJ. I'm so thrilled to introduce all of you to this great panel of publishers who are going to give away a set of books at the end of this presentation, which is super exciting. This is the first event of our summer book bash for this year, and we're just thrilled to be here and thrilled to share our enthusiasm with you. So going first, we have Anastasia Scott, who is Sales Manager at School and Library for Chronicle Books, and she will share some upcoming cookbooks, YA books, children's books, all across the board with you, which is super exciting.
Sounds good. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. Hello, everyone. All right. So hello, everyone. Thank you, Stephanie. I'm Anastasia from Chronicle Books. As Stephanie mentioned, I'm the sales manager for school and library. Today, I'm going to kick off by telling you about some of our upcoming fall 2023 highlights, starting with our adult list and then following with some of our children's books. So excited to be here today. After I'm done, I'll drop into the chat my contact info. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And I'd love to hear your thoughts as I'm kind of going through. So without further ado, first on our cookbook list, we have from the one and only Snoop Dogg. We have Snoop Dogg Presents Goon with the Spoon. Oops, sorry, is that from current slide? There we go. So this is a really exciting partnership between Snoop Dogg and Bay Area rap legend E40, who actually, believe it or not, is the guy who taught Snoop how to cook. So this new cookbook collab between the two includes 65 plus recipes. They range from kind of the more simple to more involved, ambitious projects like his extremely delicious smoked brisket. And it's also kind of fun. It's grouped by meal type. So you can kind of flip through and say, are you looking for desserts or lunchtime ideas? Or maybe you're looking for ideas in case Pharrell is coming over for the Super Bowl. This is a follow-up to Snoop's first cookbook, From Crook to Cook, which sold over 1 million copies. There's going to be tons of press, and your patrons are going to be hearing about this one everywhere. We're so excited to have it on the list. Next on the cookbook list, we have Chili Crisp from James Park. This is 50 plus recipes to satisfy your garlicky, crunchy, spicy, crunchy, garlicky cravings. So, I think during the pandemic, Chili Crisp has really kind of entered the cultural zeitgeist as just a widespread, super popular condiment. Obviously, it's been around for a lot longer than that. And so this is just kind of a fun look at the history of Chili Crisp. It has all kinds of different recipes for making your own Chili Crisp, as well as how you can use Chili Crisp to elevate dishes. James Park, he is really super popular on Instagram, as well as on TikTok. Some of his pandemic Chili Crisp recipes went super viral and had like over 1 million likes. You probably have seen them. You've maybe even made them. I highly recommend picking up this book. Next, we have a beautiful cookbook from a mother-daughter duo, Maman and Me, by Roy Shariat and Gita Sadeh. These are recipes from their Iranian-American family. So these are some other kind of TikTok stars during the pandemic. Their videos of this mother-daughter duo cooking at home went super viral, and just kind of their sweet stories and history behind, when they make these dishes, who created them, as well as just kind of how they connect back to their heritage. It has a lot of really beautiful food writing, and the recipes themselves are super delish. So everything from garlicky eggplant dip to split pea chickpea stew with crunchy potatoes, chickpea and pistachio cookies. If someone could deliver one of those to me right now, that would be awesome. So this is another one where we think it's just going to be a big hit. Next, we have Vegetable from the one and only Nick Sharma, who is Stephanie's favorite. So Nick Sharma, he was a molecular biologist turned recipe developer and photographer and chef. So what makes his cookbook so amazing, you might know him from his earlier projects, The Flavor Equation or Season, but he really takes like a very scientific approach. He actually will often develop recipes for like America's Test Kitchen, and he looks at these ingredients and kind of how you can, elevate dishes and kind of enhance the flavor, but from a really kind of scientific, technical aspect. How do you get that perfect crunchy glaze? How do you make sure that it's not mushy, but it's very soft on the outside and crisp on the outside? So, these are vegetable-centric dishes. They still do include some meat, but this next project is really just looking at the wonderful world of veggies and everything that you can do to just make a big flavored, vegetable-focused meals. Next, we have The League of Lady Poisoners, Illustrated True Stories of Dangerous Women by Lisa Perrin. There's been all of these different kind of like compilation books where you have stories of inspiring women or rebellious women. So this one takes kind of a spooky spin. You can see the cover has this beautiful kind of evil green foil. But this is just stories of women who just kind of were accused poisoners, I guess I should say. Not all were necessarily convicted. Some of them you'll root for. Maybe they're poisoning their abusive husbands, or in one case, a woman, she was poisoning her granddaughter's enslaver. But the chapters are separated kind of by motive. So as well as it has all sorts of illustrations of the different ways that they poisoned their victims. So this would just be a really fun read for spooky season. And actually, let's look back, and it comes out on September 5th. So just in time. It's actually just received a starred review in PW this week. I think their wonderful pull line was, "This is catnip for true crime lovers." So there you have it. Next, we have the new Brownies book, A Love Letter to Black Families. So this is a really amazing project. It was inspired by the Brownies book, which was a project from W.E.B. Du Bois, which was the first magazine for African-American youth. It was published back in 1920. And so this is an updated version from husband and wife duo Corita L. Brown and Charlie Palmer. Corita L. Brown is an incredible scholar who studied W.E.B. Du Bois for years. Charlie Palmer is an incredibly famous artist. It's actually a really sweet story that apparently the two of them were kind of on their first date reminiscing about this project from W.E.B. Du Bois and thought, like, wouldn't it be cool if there was like an updated version? And now, years and years later, they're bringing that into the world. So this it's like a beautiful anthology, and it has entries from 60 Black creative voices of all ages that honor, celebrate, and foster Black excellence. This is just going to be a great book for all Black families to enjoy together. Next, we have, for the person in your life who always watches SNL, The History of Sketch Comedy. So this is a journey through the kind of the art of sketch comedy by Keegan-Michael Key and L. Key. Lots of husband and wife duos on the list this season. But this is just kind of a voyage through the evolution of sketch comedy, as seen through a master of the medium, Keegan-Michael Key. And it also includes all kinds of super funny essays and interviews with the likes of Jordan Peele, Mel Brooks, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Carol Burnett, John Oliver, Stephen Colbert, and an even longer list of celebrities, but I had to pick and choose for this slide. It's actually based on their award-winning podcast, also the same name, History of Sketch Comedy. But just for anyone who's like, I could be a stand-up comic, this would be a really fun book to read. And they're going to have a multi-city tour, as well as just all kinds of press. So you'll be seeing this one all over the place this fall. Next, we have The Mini ADHD Coach, Tools and Support to Make Life Easier from Alice Gendron. I think in the last few years, there's been this really big uptick of kind of mental health TikTok or mental health Instagram accounts. One of them is actually authored by Alice Gendron, who is an artist and a writer and also a person who has ADHD. And her account, The Mini ADHD Coach, is where she for years has kind of shared these short, digestible, illustrated tips for, understanding common misconceptions about ADHD, learning about different types of symptoms of ADHD, how you can overcome different hurdles, as well as all kinds of other like hacks. So this book kind of takes that accessibility, but turns it into a book length volume. This would be a really great kind of all ages read, is like crossover for teens or adults, that just is going to be really accessible and digestible for someone who maybe might have a hard time kind of sitting through a more technical book on the subject. And that concludes the adult list. So we're going to move over to some of our children's. First up, we have from the one and only Nina LaCour, The Apartment House on Poppy Hill. So this is just a new series that we're so excited to be launching. It has kind of like the heart of like an Eloise at the Plaza, or for anyone who maybe loved our wonderful series, Ivy and Bean. But so this is the story of our protagonist, Ella, who you see on the cover, who lives in this darling house, this darling apartment house on Poppy Hill. It's set in kind of a fictional San Francisco, where Nina LaCour is also from. But she's 9 years old and she's kind of like the mayor of her apartment building. Like she keeps tabs on everyone in the building knows her. And so when all of a sudden some new tenants arrive, she's very determined to, get the scoop and help them settle in. So this is the first book in the series. It's kind of setting up the world, but it's just going to be one of those, wonderful places where you're going to feel at home at the apartment house on Poppy Hill too. And this is for ages like 6 to 10. Next, we have Books Make Good Friends from Jane Mount. So you might know Jane Mount from her books for adults. She is the author of the acclaimed Bibliophile series, which is awesome. So we're so excited that she's now doing her first book for kids. And what makes this book really cool and why all of you librarians are going to love it is that it includes so many incredible book recs for kids from a ton of different publishers, not just Chronicle books. So this is the story of a girl. Her name is Lottie. She's pretty shy. She always kind of has her nose in a book. And sometimes it's just easier for her to kind of experience the world that way than going out and maybe interacting with people herself. So this is a story of her just kind of moving through her world. She has a brother and her parents, as well as, goes to school. And she just kind of encounters all these like super normal kind of childhood things. Like she doesn't know who she wants to play with on the playground, but she really kind of takes in everyone and clocks everything going around her. But one of the ways that she kind of copes with some of those anxieties is just through reading. So this would also be a really great tool for like bibliotherapy. And it could also be really fun for programming, like finding some of these spines that are featured throughout the book. Next, we have I Want 100 Dogs. This is very important educational programming that's going to teach kids how to hustle their parents into getting a pet. Someone has to teach them how to negotiate. So this is a story. It's this little girl and her parents. And she goes into the negotiations starting big. She says, I want 100 dogs. And her parents, they're really lovable and very funny. And they kind of humor her and they say, how would you even walk 100 dogs? And so as they start to kind of negotiate all of these different aspects of pet care, she kind of says, how would you groom 30 dogs? And then she'll say, well, you're right. I'd settle for 20 dogs. So they work their way all the way through. And eventually they kind of get to the very last page where the parents are like, I can't believe we've talked her out of 100 dogs. And she's like, I can't believe I talked them into like letting me get a dog. So it's a really great book for talking to kids about all of the care that must go into taking care of a pet. Next, we have They Hold the Line, Wildfires, Wildlands, and the Firefighters Who Brave Them. I know everyone on the East Coast has been experiencing this summer, and maybe it's been kind of the first time that you've been experiencing the horror that is wildfire smoke coming into your community. Chronicle Books is based in California, so it's something that we've been experiencing for the last several years. But really, I think this summer has kind of showed us that no matter where you live in the country, you might be affected by wildfires from somewhere in this new climate reality. And we all need to learn about them, kids and adults. So this is a really great book that kind of talks about how firefighters go about fighting wildfires, which is, different than how you might be fighting a house fire. And it answers a lot of questions that kids have, like, what happens to the animals? What do we need to do if we need to evacuate? So it's just a really straightforward, great guide to kind of open up some of those conversations that we all need to be having. So good for kids and adults. Next, we have What Do Brothers Do All Day by A1 Mance. So this is a really beautiful update inspired by Richard Scarry's What Do People Do All Day? It was actually started as a zine project. A1 Mance is an artist and professor at Mills College in Oakland. And she kind of started this project during the pandemic, just showing Black men living their lives and kind of all of the different just kind of things you might be doing in a day. And some librarians actually approached her and said, this would be such a cool children's book. You've got to, it kind of reminds us of Richard Scarry's What Do People Do All Day? And so here we are with that spin. So, this just kind of walks through what do brothers do all day? They float and fly and roll and play and wait in line and get lined up and listen and laugh, dance. It just kind of goes through all these different actions and very lyric, really gorgeous illustrations, but a great read for any collection. Next, we have Two New Years by Richard Ho. So this is actually inspired by the author's own life, where, and when you think about celebrating New Year's, you might think of January 1st. But in his family, they celebrate New Year's a couple different times during the year. First in the fall when they celebrate Rosh Hashanah, and then later in the spring when they celebrate the Lunar New Year. So this kind of walks through those two different times of the year while they're celebrating New Year's and all of the different kind of traditions their family has, the foods they eat, the different things that they do to kind of reflect on the year past and look forward to the year future. And it's just a really beautiful book kind of melding these two cultures and just great for any collections where you're talking about different holidays. This is a really unique and needed spin. You can see some of the illustrations. And next we have, and finally on our middle grade list, Free Throws, Friendship, and Other Things We Fouled Up. We love a good novel, especially that's kind of centers on girls in sports. So this is a story of two girls. Rory, she is newly moved to Cincinnati, where her dad just got a job as a college basketball coach. Their family has moved around a lot and they just like live and breathe basketball. Like that is their universe. So imagine her delight when she gets to her new school and she makes friends with this other girl named Abby, whose dad is also a university basketball coach. So obviously they have so much in common. They both have this like deep love of the sport. But when they go home and tell their dads about this awesome discovery, turns out their dads are actually not super thrilled because they know each other. And something happened when they were rivals in high school that just made them despise each other, and they're really displeased that the girls have struck up a friendship. So this story kind of bounces back and forth between, the ancient history of their dads growing up in the 90s, as well as in the present day, while they're trying to kind of figure out like what had happened between them that would make them so upset about this friendship, and why can't they just get along, especially when they seem to have a lot in common. And so it'd be really great for anyone who's interested in sports, but also maybe for like March Madness roundups when you're going into the spring months. What else? It also has, it's just written with a lot of like humor and heart. There's a basketball playing nun. I'll leave it at that. And that concludes our wonderful fall list. So thanks so much for listening. And again, I'm going to drop my email in the chat as well as an Edelweiss catalog in case anyone wants to look up these titles a little more on your own. So thanks for listening, and I will hand you over to Samantha.
All right, all of those sounded amazing, especially 100 dogs, because we all need that. Let me quickly share my screen. Okay, I'm hoping everyone can see what I want you to see, which is all of our contact information. But thank you, Stephanie, so much for putting this all together. I am Samantha Slavin. I'm the Associate Manager of Library Marketing at Macmillan. And I'm very excited to be here today. But before I begin and get with the books, here are all of the various ways you can get in touch with us. We love hearing from you, so please reach out with any comments, questions, requests, concerns, whatever. And if you would like to download Macmillan eGalleys on Edelweiss, here is how. We also have all these instructions linked on our website. And Happy Half Hour, this is maybe my favorite part of the week. Happy Half Hour is our weekly book talking series. It airs every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. And the library marketing department basically just talks about upcoming adult and YA titles, and we have a lot of fun during it. It's 30 minutes, so definitely stop by. And then finally, before the books, if you would like to learn even more about our book club resources, check out our very big book club resource page on the website. We have discussion guides, sweepstakes, all the big book club news, and so much more. And so now to the books, the exciting part. First up is The Porcelain Maker. This is a really emotionally wrenching love story. It's about a brilliant and talented Jewish architect who falls in love with this beautiful and charismatic German artist, and it becomes her mission to save him when he's imprisoned in Dachau. And his fate is based on these exquisite porcelain figures that he creates. And she would rather die than live without him. And then it fast forwards over 6 years later, and her daughter is on a journey to discover the identity of her father, the father that her mother always kept a secret her entire life. And the writing in this one is just so lyrical and evocative, you will not believe that it's the author's debut. And it's also based on a real place and somewhat on a real story at an SS-run porcelain factory, which was a subcamp of Dachau. And then next is Yours for the Taking. I finished this one recently and it totally stuck with me. It blew my mind. Speculative fiction is just having such a huge success right now. And this one will fit right in with Station 11, Severance, and The School for Good Mothers. And in it, we have a feminist utopia and dystopia. And it's a story all about the control and failings of white corporate feminism. It is a queer debut and it's set in the year 2050 with Ava, who loves her life, but she finds it hard to be happy in a world where climate change is rapidly creating an unsafe environment. So it's a little close to home right now. But in this book, there is the Inside Project, which is a series of weather-safe structures all around the world that guarantee the survival of all the accepted applicants. And so Ava begins to work on this project, and she and a few other women start to notice that there are some cracks in the system. It is a really haunting yet beautiful dystopian story, and like me, it will leave other readers with so much to think and talk about. It's a perfect book club pick. And then next is After the Forest. This is a dark and enchanting take on my personal favorite fairy tale. Fairy tale retellings are totally having their moment right now, and I'm such a fan of it. This one has dark magic and it's super enchanting. And it has the best twist. It has baking magic. And this book is literally one that magic has its own voice in it. It has its own motives and the magic can't be ignored. This isn't Hansel and Gretel's story. It is Greta's story. So it's been 20 years since Greta and Hans were trapped in the gingerbread house, and it has not gone well. They're in debt. Hans has a gambling problem, and Greta has a secret. Their witch from 20 years ago has been whispering in her ear for the past 2 decades, and the whispers are about this gingerbread recipe. It's the best gingerbread you've ever tasted, and it's also their only hope for staying afloat. So Greta has to stay out of the town's gossip and suspicion, which dark magic is kind of taking over and returning to the woods where they lived, and she has to save herself, Hans, and their town. But she also can't let the dark magic kill her first. This is great for any fans of Alex E. Harrow, Other Birds, and Nettle and Bone. And Bookshops and Bone Dust. So some of you may know Legends and Lattes. This one is the prequel. Legends and Lattes was the library reads pick, so we're super excited for this one. This follows coffee shop owner Viv, who was also the lead in Legends and Lattes, and she still has her career with a notorious mercenary company that is sent to recuperate from an injury in a sleepy beach town. She spends her hours at a bookshop in trouble in the company of its foul-mouthed proprietor, and these books are just so heartwarming. It feels like a cup of tea and a hug, but the fantasy here is just so on point. And Brainworms, totally different. As you can tell from the cover, this is from the author of Tell Me I'm Worthless, and it is a searing body horror novel of obsession, violence, and pleasure. that examines the trials and tribulations of modern dating while also tackling some difficult topics like modern day fascism, trauma, and transphobia, all told through a trans lens. It's shocking, grotesque, and downright filthy. And this confronts the creepy reality of political terrorism while also exploring the depths of love, pain, and identity. And then next up is Here in the Dark. This one is, don't tell anyone, one of my favorites. I am a huge theater person, so I was very excited that I also get a thriller theater book, which who knew that mashup was so amazing. This is great for fans of Alice Feeney and Christine Mangan. It is about Vivian Perry, who is an actress turned theater critic who ends up granting an interview that uncovers dark secrets. And she later learns that her interviewer has actually been killed and she was the last one to see him alive. So she takes it upon herself to investigate the crime, and this leads her to meet a variety of dangerous people and uncover a bunch of lies. It's very gripping and propulsive. And it's shot with a lot of dark glamour. It takes us behind the scenes of New York theater and lifts the curtains on the lies we tell ourselves and each other. It's also kind of cool because the author used to be a theater critic, so she takes a lot, not necessarily from the murder, but from the theater world into this book. Readers of Gillian Flynn's Sharp Objects will absolutely love this, and so will readers who are interested in subject matter that tackles substance abuse and addiction, and in the vein of Emmy-winning award shows like Euphoria. And then Calamity. So we are just obsessed with romantasy, as everyone is, and this isn't really romantasy, it's more science fiction, but I'm covering it in that umbrella. And this is from our new imprint Bramble, which kind of just focuses on romantasy, which is just the coolest thing ever. And this is the imprint's inaugural debut, and it is equal parts steamy interstellar romance and sci-fi adventure. It's perfect for fans of Firefly and Ilona Andrews. And this is about a spaceship captain who is hired for a scouting mission on a backwater desert planet. But he's saddled with the son of the terrifying elite family who hired them. And obviously sparks fly as they encounter volcanic eruptions, secret cultists, and the deadly galactic fighters. This has the perfect amount of sci-fi elements, but great banter, great action, and obviously a steamy romance. And it's the first in a new series, which is even more exciting. So we'll get a lot more where this came from. And next up, Amazing Grace Adams. This is a debut that is completely touching and unforgettable. It's the story of an invisible woman, Grace Adams, who is pushed to the brink, and she is now finally pushing back. Grace Adams is stuck in traffic on her daughter's birthday, and she's completely losing it. She steps out of her car and leaves it in the middle of the road, setting off across London armed with a Love Island-themed birthday cake on a mission to win back her estranged 16-year-old daughter. But as we're going through, it takes place in the span of one day. So as we're going through this one day, we also have to understand how Grace got to where she is today. So we see this beautifully romantic story of how she met her husband and of their story together, and how it ended in kind of this turmoil. And you'll just want to cry with Grace and laugh with her, and also just hug her throughout this journey, as she has to remind everyone of her importance, but she also really has to remind herself. And this is great for fans of Leon Moriarty for the humor in her books, but also the poignancy of Jojo Moyes. And next is Funny Feelings. So this is about a comedian whose star is on the rise, but she must fake date her manager, longtime friend, in order to stir up publicity for herself. Even though her manager has sworn off the spotlight for himself, he'll do whatever he can to help her realize her dream. But of course, then their fake relationship grows a little more real, and they must finally face the funny feelings they have for each other head on. This has all the best romance tropes. It has fake dating, it has a little comedy, and also a found family aspect. And it is also from a rising book talk star. So we know that this will get all of the hype and everything and more. And The Serpent and the Wings of Night. Some more romantasy. This one is really exciting. It's filled with dark magic, bloodthirsty intrigue, and very, very steamy romance. This is perfect for fans of the ACOTAR series, and it has humans and vampires that are just trying to survive, but in order to survive, they have to follow 3 rules. They can never trust anyone, never yield, and above else, they always have to guard their heart. And this is, it was a drop-in, but it is already one of the most talked about books in the office. So people are absolutely loving this. And it will be a series. And next up is the fun. So for a little nonfiction, this one is a deep dive into the largest hedge fund in the world, Bridgewater Associates, and its former leader, Ray Dalio. So here the author Copeland interviewed a bunch of people inside and close to the firm in order to get a clear picture of what Dalio is really like and how the firm runs. It traces more than 50 years of Dalio's leadership, and it peels back the curtain to reveal a world of insane wealth and power, where former FBI Director Jim Comey kisses Dalio's ring, recent Pennsylvania Senate candidate David McCormick sells out, and countless Bridgewater acolytes describe what it's actually like to work at this fascinating firm. This one kind of reads like a novel, a little bit like a thriller or adventure story in a way. So it's really cool to hit that nonfiction business crowd, but also the more adventure crowd. And next is A Trader in Whitehall. This is the first book in the new Parisian Orphan series, and it is about Evelyn Redfern, who was the most notorious child in the world, known as the Parisian Orphan. And now she's working at a munitions factory in World War II London, yearning for a different life. And she sees an opportunity to work in Winston Churchill's cabinet war room, so she obviously takes it. But then one of her coworkers is murdered, and she draws on her amateur sleuthing skills, gleaned from reading mystery novels, like us all, to try to get to the bottom of the crime. And she isn't just the plucky, talented secretary spy we come to know in the present day. Her past as the infamous Parisian Orphan is sure to leave its mark on readers, and it adds an extra layer of really great mystery. Absolution. So Alex McDermott is back with her first novel in 6 years, following The Ninth Hour, which people just absolutely loved. And this one is a novel that flips from present day to the 1960s, from Maryland to Vietnam, and it's filled with urgent questions about race, colonialism, family, motherhood, and religion. It's the story of two young American wives in 1963 that are determined to relieve the suffering of the orphaned and sick children around them. And then it also takes place 60 years later in the present day, with one of the women and the daughter of the other, as they look back at their shared lives and kind of come to terms with how they're living today and everything that led up to it. And Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Lord. This is a obviously Regency romance mystery, and it is about a woman who does not want to give into the life that she's supposed to. She is very privileged and high up in her society, and one day one of her friends is murdered, and she doesn't believe the story that everyone is telling about the murder, so she has to figure out what actually happened. And then next is Above the Salt. This one is based on a true story. It is a really moving saga of a couple torn apart while immigrating from Portugal to the US. And then they're reunited in the midst of the Civil War after both of their lives have really changed. And they have to make these impossible decisions and overcome difficult obstacles in order to be together again. It's a really captivating and beautiful tribute to the power of true love and the sacrifices we make in order to have true love. And it's just a really sweeping story that spans generations and historical moments and is simultaneously tinged with love and conflict. And then A True Account. This one has pirates, which everyone is very excited for. But this one is about a woman who takes to the seas at the end of Golden Age piracy. Then it also takes place in 1930 when a professor is putting together her life story and finds this centuries-old mystery that she is determined to solve. And together, both of these timelines make up the really unforgettable story of two women, both coming from very different worlds and both shattering the rules of their own societies and kind of daring to risk everything to go out on their own account. Fans of the courageous and determined heroine of Anna North's Outlawed, the story of two women in two very different worlds like that in The Lost Apothecary, and a beautiful story set in the time of pirates such as the Starless Sea, will find so much to love in this one. And then On the Plus Side by Jenny L. Howe. So this is What Not to Wear meets Queer Eye meets All the Feels. And this is just a really sparkling romantic comedy where a new guest on a popular makeover show has her style and her love life transformed when she and a very grumpy cameraman find a connection that sends the show's ratings into a frenzy when they're caught on camera together. And you just have to love a good reality TV rom-com like One to Watch, and spoiler alert. And as with Jenny's previous book, The Makeup Test, this is a fat positive story where our heroine does not have to lose weight to find her happy ending. While You Were Out, this is a searing memoir of a family besieged by mental illness. And it's also an incisive exploration of the systems that failed them and a testament to the love that sustained them. It begins as a personal story of one family's struggles, then kind of opens outward as the author details how childhood tragedy catalyzed a journalism career focused on exposing our country's flawed mental health care. It combines the intimacy of memoir and also the rigor of investigative reporting, and explores the consequences of shame, the havoc of botched public policy, and hope offered by new treatment strategies. It's very powerful, candid, and kind of filled with surprising humor, which you wouldn't really expect, but adds a little bit of a lightness to it. And overall, it's just the story of one family's love and resilience in the face of great loss. And then my final title for today is The Lost Cause by Cory Doctorow. So this takes place 30 years from now in a world where we're making progress, mitigating climate change, slowly but surely. But what about all the angry old people who couldn't let go of the past? So this book asks, what do we do about people who cling to their belief that their own children are actually the enemy? So this is really fun, kind of alternate reality sci-fi, but it's a different viewpoint. It's a really fun one, and Cory Doctorow just has this writing that transports you completely into anything that he's saying. And with that, that is all for me. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you again, Stephanie, for putting this together. Again, here's all of our contact info, so feel free to reach out. I've also included my email at the bottom of this slide. So if you have any other questions or anything about the books I presented today, please let me know.
Thank you, Samantha. That was great. I really need all the romanticy, so I'm here for it. And next we have Antonio. Last but not least.
Hi, everybody. Yes, Samantha and Anastasia, you guys did such a great job. I want to read all of these books. I agree that the phrase romanticy, I cannot get rid of that. Like, now that lives with me forever. And I'm going to try to find a way to like use that in some of our middle grade and children's books. I'm just going to share my screen really briefly here and see if I can get into presentation mode. Yes. Great. So my name is Antonio. I head up marketing publicity at Levine Querido. We're a very small independent publisher based in Hoboken. We're right here in New Jersey. I'm actually in our Hoboken office right now. And I just bought a house in Jersey City. So like New Jersey is a very big part of our brand. Arthur Levine lives in Montclair. And in fact, all of our books, if you open them up, will say Montclair as like one of the founding cities. It's like Montclair, Amsterdam, you know, because that's what it is. So I'm reaching out today. What I want to speak about today is a couple of books. I've only highlighted about 9 books out of like the 16 or 17 we have coming out this fall. And I'm hoping that I don't go over on time because I tend to be very chatty. So Desert Queen is an incredible picture book by Jyoti Gopal and Svabu Kohli. It's the true story of young Harish Kumar. At a very young age, Harish loses both his parents and has to find a way to support his 2 sisters. And so he takes up he sort of like follows his love of traditional dance in India, and Queen Harish is born. And I'm going to share some of the interior images here for you to see. Queen Harish, the character, like sort of defied these gender conventions of middle-class Indian life. And Queen Harish ended up being such a big star, ended up going to dance with Bollywood stars and to marry and to have 2 kids. I think what's really beautiful about this book are these incredible jewel tones that you see in the art. Also, I think another important thing is Indian representation. Obviously, both the creators are South Asian descent. And for some of the librarians out there, Baby Got Back Matter, so much back matter in this book, including information about discussions on gender and celebrating differences and code switching, and a little bit about the life of Harish. So one book that I'm really excited to talk to you is about Donna Barbara Higuera's follow-up to The Last Quintista. You may remember Donna as the writer of The Last Quintista and Lupe Wong Won't Dance. And Donna went on to win the Newbery Medal for The Last Quintista and also the Poor Belpré Medal. So this one is a complicated book because what happens when the spoiler is also the hook? And so one of the things that Donna, when she wrote The Last Quintista, she was going on tour, and a question she often got from kids and other parents and readers was, what happens to the kids that stay on Earth? If you remember in The Last Quintista, 300 people get selected to go onto this special ship, travel into the future, and keep humanity alive. So what happens to everyone else? This is that story. So Alebrijes is an astonishing novel with imaginative world building. It's incredible story that I'm calling it's like page turning. It's a little bit dark. It's full of Mexican folklore. And you know you're in the hands of a masterful world builder when you're reading it. We just got a star review today from Kirkus, calling it breathtaking. This heartfelt adventure signals hope for humanity, even in the aftermath of darkness. It's true that, you know, fantasy is really big right now, and I think part of it is escaping just the craziness of our realities. But one thing I want to say about this novel that's really beautiful and that'll hopefully stand out is that I don't have finished copies yet, but I have this like dummy that our production team put together, and it's got this die cut in it. And so when you open that, it opens up to this incredible image by David Alvarez. Super excited for Alebrijes. If you don't know what Alebrijes are, they're these creatures of Mexican folklore that were popularized by the film Coco. So they're these sort of mystical animal creatures that sort of follow you around and protect you. Another book I'm excited to talk about is The Dubious Pranks of Shandy Goodman. You may remember Marie Lowe as the author of Aviva versus the Dybbuk, and that book just won the Sidney Taylor Book Award in January. This is a follow-up book that is so completely different. I cannot imagine it's from the same writer. I think the thing that really that I love about Marie Lowe is how she really examines and understands the brains of young tween girls. Anyway, in this book, you're going to meet Shandy Goodman. She's shy. She's a little bit awkward. She's a 12-year-old Orthodox Jewish girl, and she's struggling in school because she doesn't have a lot of friends. And then on the other hand, there's another student named Gail, and she's sort of the queen bee. She's popular. She's the complete opposite of Shandy. And one day, Shandy looks out her window, and Gail is staring up out of her own window with a sign that reads, "Do you want to know a secret?" And this is what kicks off the plot for this, what we're calling sort of like a middle grade thriller. Somebody in our office said that it was something like, you know, like imagine like Jennifer's Body, but it's middle grade, and it's like, or imagine like the Heathers, but nobody dies because it's 6th grade. So it's got a lot of propulsive elements that are going to keep you turning the page. I think a really important element of this book too is Jewish representation. In order for us to draw these young girls that you see on the cover, we have to have Marie Lowe take photographs of students where she's a teacher, because there are almost no representation of young Jewish Orthodox girls in media. So just something to think about. Salsa Magic is a debut middle grade novel by Leticia Marrero, who is based in the DC Baltimore area. This is an incredible story about a young girl who's sort of discovering a lot about her heritage and her Puerto Rican culture. So it's a multi-generational narrative. There's elements of like Santeria, there's And also New York plays a really important role in the story, like the actual city of New York. So like there's references to like, to bodegas, to, all the kinds of things that we take for granted when we think about New York, like the subway or Stoops. So very much a New York book called Salsa Magic by a new debut writer. Moving on to young adult, Brooms is going to be such a beautiful book when it comes out. I actually have a finished copy here in the office. These are advances that we just got shipped to us. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous graphic novel. It's sort of like, Fast and the Furious, but like witchy and also queer and also tons of representation. So it's about this group of kids who are competing in illegal broom races in the South in the 1930s. So what happens is that the broom races are a way for their sort of power to be like, well, I don't want to give away too much, but what I'll say is that the broom races are unsanctioned and it's banned. And in order for them to participate and win, they have to participate at night when no one is watching. There's just incredible art here. I'll show it to you. This is some of the great art by Theo Duval, who also did some of the, who did the color paletting. You can see the line work is just incredible here. This is the book that I haven't presented yet, but it's The Prince and the Coyote. We're reuniting the team that created The Sebring World, which is one of LQ's award-winning books from our debut list. The Prince and the Coyote is one of those books that sort of begs for a lot of really interesting comps. It's like Gladiator, but kind of gay. And it's like The Song of Achilles, but it's set in pre-Columbian Mexico. This is a thrilling historical action adventure about one of Mexico's greatest heroes, Prince Neza. Prince Neza is the heir to one of the many warring city-states in Mexico in the 15th century. And when his father is killed and his mother and his sisters are kidnapped, he must go into exile and lead a sort of Count de Monte Cristo-esque revenge plot to take back his kingdom and to rescue his family. Prince Neza is one of Mexico's greatest historical figures. He was a poet, he was a philosopher, he was an architect, and a warrior. The story is told through prose, through poetry, and through illustrations. And we have a simultaneous Spanish edition that David Bowles also translated. I'll show you some of the art here that Amanda Mijangos did for the book, which I'm obsessed with. I just love this kind of art. The Boy from Clearwater is a sweeping graphic novel memoir. It's sort of in the vein of Persepolis and March. It uncovers the life of a brave boy who's actually a living person, who is a man in his 90s now, who lived through some of the turbulent history of Taiwan, from like the Japanese occupation to the Civil War with mainland China to today. We see in the novel, in the first part of the novel, the sort of soul-crushing experience of his detention and his imprisonment. He's literally imprisoned because he participated in a book club. And so after being tortured, he's sentenced to 10 years in prison, and he's deprived of civil rights for 7 years and sent to Green Island for reformation. This book, it's actually 2 books, one we're publishing now and one we're publishing in the spring. I think of them as being really timely and really urgent. They're translated from 3 different languages. And in order to show the 3 different languages, we did a color coding system so you could see which language was the language that is being spoken in, intended to be represented on the page. The second book is going to come out in May 2024. I had this really incredible meeting at the Taipei Cultural Center last week, where someone who I was talking to, the director of the program, said that her aunt was also someone who was in these terrible prison camps in Taiwan. So this is something that's like real history that I think deserves to be seen by a larger audience. The art is incredible. And like I said, it's the kind of book that if you liked March, you liked Persepolis, you like these real graphic novel memoirs, you're going to love The Boy from Clearwater. One of the last books on my list today is The Girl's Gonna Be Okay. It's senior spring at Ellsbury High School in, I believe, Houston, Texas. And Dawn Sausalito Dawn Salcedo, is working on a documentary called The Queer Girl Is Going to Be Okay. And the thing is that her documentary is up for a prize at the Austin Film Festival and offers her a free ride to get into UT Austin. She needs this money and the scholarship money in order to pay off her college, but also to take care of her dad, who's struggled with mental health since her mom died. So thankfully she has her BFFs, Eddie and Georgia, to help her get through it. It's just like a really touching but joyous story. It's going to make you laugh. It's going to make you cry. It'll make you believe that eventually everything is going to be okay. Dale Walls is a debut author. I believe she just turned 29 or 30, very, very young person. And she's getting her PhD they're getting their PhD at Stanford University right now. This is Dale. And then the editor of this book is 24-year-old Irene Vasquez, who was formerly my assistant, who works here at Levine Querido. And this is a picture of Irene when they were 18 years old. They knew Dale Walls in high school. And I wanted to mention two books that are coming. They were formerly on the fall list and now have moved to spring, but they take place in New Jersey, and I feel like they have to be talked about. One of them is The Girl, the Ring, and the Baseball Bat, and it's by 26-year-old Camille Gamero Tavares. Camille just won a Pura Belpré honor for her book, High Spirits, which is a collection of short stories. It's set in Jersey City, and it features teens from that are going to a school in Jersey City. It's like a fictionalized school. It's got magical realism. Rosie discovers sort of a long lost aunt who offers her a key to a series of magical talismans, and they guide her to this sort of journey of self-discovery. There's this persuasive jacket that makes you do whatever it wants. There's a baseball bat that fixes whatever it breaks. And then there's a ring that'll make you fall in love with anyone. So I think what Camille does really well is that she really captures the voice of this like sort of young Dominican teen. It's a whip smart book. We think about it like as sort of the outsiders, but for today. I think if you liked The Get Down, if you liked Spike Lee's Crooklyn, if you liked Steve McQueen's Small Axe Education, I think you're going to love The Girl, the Ring, and the Baseball Bat. And the last book that I want to talk about is How Do I Draw These Memories? This is by another 26-year-old artist. Her name is Janelle Joshua, and she sort of spent her childhood shuffling back between Savannah, Georgia, and New Jersey, and she had to live with her grandparents because her mother was struggling with mental illness and wasn't able to be present and take care of her and her brothers. Still, her family and her brothers and her grandparents found a way to keep going amidst the dark times. This is another graphic novel memoir about nostalgia, about faith, about the preciousness of life, about unconditional love. And I want to show you some of the interior art here. She told me a story that in the second grade, she found a portfolio of her childhood, and I'm sorry, I'm reading this wrong. In second grade, she found her mother's portfolio, and she started to go to school, and during lunch, she would draw images of her friends in order to emulate her mom. I think if you know a teen or a kid or a young adult or a new adult, young person who liked Magic Fish or The New Kid, or even who liked books like Hot Cone by Ebony Flowers, they're gonna love this book. And that's all I got. Thank you so much.
And thank you again, Antonio, Anastasia, and Samantha for being here. We were so happy to have you. These are so many great books. I'm looking forward to so many of them on my list, writing it down. So thank you again. Lots of enthusiasm in the chat. Yeah, and thanks again one last time.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.